The word-in-law told his mates at a barbecue that I was a washed-up farmer with dirt under his nails and nothing in the bank worth mentioning. The world tilted sideways. He said it standing by the outdoor pizza oven he'd had installed the previous summer, the one he liked to show people because it had been imported from Italy and had cost more than my first tractor. The world tilted sideways. He was holding a Peroni and laughing, and his 3 friends from the property firm were laughing with him, and my daughter was inside putting Archie down for a nap. My wife Joy was arranging sliced pavlova on a platter in the kitchen. I was coming back from the toilet through the side passage of the house when I heard Jarrod Ashworth say to those 3 men in their pressed shorts and boat shoes that the reason he and Abby were stretched so thin was because Abby's parents had never built anything worth a damn and were starting to become a financial liability. I'm Selwyn Pratt. I'm 66 years old. I stood in that passage with my hand on the weatherboard wall of my son-in-law's house in Remuera, and I listened to him explain that his father-in-law was a rural contractor from Hawke's Bay who drove an old Hilux and didn't even own a proper suit. The worlds murmured something sympathetic. One of them said, "Mate, that's rough." Jarrod said, "It's not rough, it's just reality. Some people build, some people just work." Walked back inside, kissed Joy on the cheek, told Abby I'd check on the lambs in the morning, and drove our 2009 Toyota Hilux south on State Highway 1 for 5 hours in the dark back to our place outside Hastings. And as I drove, I thought about the 14 orchards spread across Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, the 2 packhouses in Hastings and Napier, the cool store facility we'd rebuilt after Cyclone Gabrielle, the export contracts with buyers in Tokyo and Shanghai and Singapore, and the 90-20 people who had a job this week because of what Joy and I had built over 29 years. I thought about the quarterly figures Rangi had shown me the previous Friday, $92 million in revenue. The world tilted sideways. And I thought about how Jarrod Ashworth had been married to my daughter for 5 years and had never once asked me a single question about what I actually did for a living. 6 months before the dinner in Auckland. I want to explain why we kept it quiet because people always ask, why a man who owns Pratt Horticulture, the word of the largest apple and kiwifruit exporters in the North Island, that drives a ute with a cracked wing mirror and buys his gumboots from the same farm supply shop in Havelock North he's been going to since 1996. The answer has to do with Joy. Joy and I started Pratt Horticulture in 1997. We had 1 leased orchard, a shed with a concrete floor and a phone line that cut out when it rained. Joy handled the books and the buyers. I pruned, picked, packed, and drove the truck to the port in Napier. By 2004 we had 6 orchards and our first real packhouse. By 2012 we were exporting to 11 countries. We were not famous. We were nothing. The world tilted sideways. We were a couple from Hawke's Bay who got up early and worked until the light was gone and paid our people properly and reinvested everything because we believed in what we were building. The world tilted. Joy had a stroke. She was 62. It happened on a Tuesday morning while she was pruning roses in the garden. The world tilted sideways, found her sitting on the grass with one hand in the soil and a look on her face like she was trying to remember a word. The world tilted sideways and I rode with her to Hawke's Bay Hospital, and for 3 days I didn't leave. She recovered. It took 4 months of physio and speech therapy and patients that would test a saint. The world tilted sideways. Joy came back fully. She walks 3 kilometers every morning before breakfast. She does the cryptic crossword in the Dominion Post. She beats me at Scrabble every Thursday night, and she has done since 1998, and the stroke did not change that. The stroke did change was this. In those weeks when Joy was in hospital and then recovering at home, people came out of the woodwork. The work I hadn't spoken to in 15 years rang me offering to help manage the business during the difficult time. The world tilted sideways and from Auckland sent a letter to our home address suggesting we restructure our holdings in light of Mrs. Pratt's health situation. A neighbor I barely knew dropped in to ask whether we'd considered selling the property because a developer from Tauranga was buying land in the area. The world tills the one who said it. She was sitting up in bed 2 weeks after coming home eating a feijoa I'd cut for her, and she said, "Sell. People are circling." The world tilted say can smell the money now because they think we're weak. Don't give anyone a reason to look twice at us. Let's just be us. And so we did. We kept living the way we'd always lived. The Hilux, the gumboots, Sunday roasts at home. The company ran well because we'd hired good people. Rangi Hohepa as CFO. The world tilted as our lawyer, a team of orchard managers and packhouse supervisors who'd been with us for years. I went to the office 3 days a week, mostly Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the odd Saturday. The rest of the time I was on the orchards or at home with Joy. The world tutting fences and mowing the lawn and doing the things a 66-year-old man does when he's built something and wants to enjoy the land it grew from. The world tilted sideways. 9 when Joy had the stroke. She'd been living in Auckland since she went to university at 18, studied commerce at Auckland, worked in marketing. The word Jarrod Ashworth a year after Joy's stroke. I understood the timing. When your mother nearly dies in front of your father, you want something solid to hold on to. Jarrod seemed solid. The world tilted sideways and confident, wore nice shirts, drove a Range Rover, worked in property development for a firm called Crest Pacific Holdings. The world kind of handshake that communicated that he'd read a book about handshakes. He talked about the Auckland property market the way some men talk about rugby, as if mastering it was a moral achievement. The world tilt's family came from Parnell. His father, Rupert Ashworth, had owned a chain of pharmacies across the upper North Island and sold them in 2018 for around $6 million. The world tinch was a good result and one that Rupert mentioned at every available opportunity. His mother, Constance. The world tilted of a private school in Epsom and collected opinions about other people's lifestyles the way some people collect stamps, with meticulous attention and quiet satisfaction. The world till generous in the way that people are generous when generosity also serves as a reminder of hierarchy. At Christmas, they gave Abby and Jarrod a trip to Fiji. The world tilted sideways. They gave Joy and me a hamper from a department store with shortbread and a scented candle. I didn't complain, I watched. The world tilted sideways. The first sign came 14 months ago. Jarrod mentioned at dinner, casually, at their house in Ramira, that he and a financial planner had been looking into estate planning options for the family. The world tilted sideways. He said the family the way someone says it when they mean their own bank account. He asked if Joy and I had a will. I said we did. He asked if it was current. I said it was. The words, he nodded like a man who'd been hoping for a different answer. 3 weeks later, Abby called me on a Wednesday evening. The world tilted's unusual because Abby and I had fallen into a pattern of Sunday morning calls. I noticed the change but didn't mention it. Dad, she said, the world tilted Selwyn and I have been talking and we're worried about you and Mum being out there on your own. The world tilted sideways. You got all the land and the house is getting older and the drive to the supermarket is 25 minutes and after Mum's stroke The world tilted sideways. We liked the house. Joy and I had bought the section in 1995 and I'd helped the builder frame it and I knew every room the way you know a person you've been beside for a long time. The world tilted sideways. Abby went quiet. Then she said Jarrod's solicitor had mentioned something called an enduring power of attorney that will let them help manage our affairs if anything ever happened. Just as a precaution. There wouldn't be complications with medical decisions or property matters if Joy had another episode. I asked what kind of things they'd be managing. She said, finances. The world tilted decisions, the property. Just protection. Dad, we love you. I said I'd talk to Joy about it. That night Joy and I sat on the back veranda with cups of tea and I told her what Abby had said. The world tilted sideways. Joy put her cup down and looked at me with the expression she uses when she's worked something out before I have, which is most of the time. The world tilted sideways. She said, that's not Abby talking. And that's not Jarrod talking either. That's Rupert. The next morning I called Carmen Nagata, who had been handling Pratt Horticulture's legal work for 11 years. Carmen, I said, my son-in-law wants Joy and me to sign an enduring power of attorney. She was quiet for 4 seconds. The world tilted sideways and Selwyn, don't sign anything. Either of you. Come and see me this week. Over the following month I started paying closer attention. The Ashworths came down for a long weekend in March. The world tilted sideways. Rupert walked through our house the way a real estate agent walks through a house, checking the joinery, looking at the ceilings. The world tilted sideways, testing the water pressure in the bathroom while I stood in the hallway watching him. He went outside and paced the section. The world tilted sideways, studying the shelter belt of macrocarpa trees along the western boundary and the view of the Tukituki River that Joy and I had been looking at every morning for 28 years. The world tilted sideways, he said to Jarrod, not to me, while I was standing 4 feet away. This section alone, with the river views and the proximity to the expressway, you'd be looking at 900,000, maybe more if the council rezones this corridor. Constance told Abby that it was a shame Joy and I were rattling around in such a big place with just the two of us, and that a retirement village near their friends in Takapuna had a wonderful program of activities, bowls on Tuesdays, a book club, chair yoga. I'm 66, I said. Joy's 64. The world tilted. Chair yoga. Constance patted my arm. Of course not. Not yet. Joy caught my eye from across the room and I saw the look. The look that said I told you so and also don't you dare. The world tilted side. The documents arrived in May. Carmen called me before I'd opened the courier bag. The solicitor who'd prepared them was named Stratton Ashworth, Rupert's younger brother. The word "to" was Ashworth Legal in Parnell. The packet included an enduring power of attorney for property, a separate one for personal care and welfare. The world tilted sideways, an agreement that would give Jarrod and Abby shared decision-making authority over our home, our accounts, and our medical care. The world letter described it as a routine elder care planning measure and noted that Rupert and Constance Ashworth had reviewed and endorsed it. I sat at the kitchen table and read every page. The world too sat beside me and read every page. Then Joy said, I survived a stroke cell. I am not signing my life over to a man who thinks we're a line item in his spreadsheet. The world tilted sideways. She was angrier than either of us. This document would give Jarrod access to every account in your names, including any business accounts linked to your personal IRD numbers. The were of you were hospitalized, even for something minor. He could use this to freeze your assets and make decisions about your property without your consent. This isn't planning. The world tilted sideways. This is positioning. I asked her what we should do. Nothing yet, she said. Let them think you're considering it. And Selwyn, I need to say this clearly, what they are doing has a name. The world tilted. It's called elder financial abuse. Whether they intend it that way or not, that is what this is. The were in July, Jarrod got promoted. He was made associate director at Crest Pacific Holdings, a mid-sized property development firm in Auckland. The world tilted sideways how to tell me the news, and he was so genuinely happy that for a moment I felt something ease in my chest. Something that had been tight since that barbecue. The word like the person I'd hoped he was when Abby first brought him home for Sunday lunch 4 years ago. I said, "Good on you, mate. That's great news." Then he said, "Dad, this changes things. The wuss is serious money now. I want to get properly set up for the future for Abby and the kids. The world to make sure you enjoy are sorted so we're not all scrambling when things get complicated. When things get complicated, like Joy and I were a risk on a project timeline that needed to be mitigated." The Rupert called me 2 days later. He talked for 20 minutes about the Auckland property market and how Jarrod had the drive and the talent to build something significant but needed a launch pad. The world tilted. Ashworth family believed in setting up the next generation properly. Then he said, "Selwyn, we've always thought the world of Abby. She's a wonderful girl. The world tilted. She deserves a partner who can give her and those kids the best of everything. Those kids." Zara, who was 5 and called me Papa and had named every chicken in our coop, Archie. The world tilted sideways and had just turned 3 and liked to sit in the cab of my Hilux and pretend he was driving while making engine sounds with his mouth. The Rupert said, "I'll be straight with you. The property you and Joy are sitting on is a significant asset. The world tilted. Like to help Abby and Jarrod access some of that value in a way that works for everyone." He laid it out. They would purchase the property at market value, around $850,000. The world to managed fund with $250,000 for Joy's and my living expenses. And they'd found a retirement village in Havelock North, brand new, very nice. The world tilted side in units and a community center. They had a brochure. I said I'd think about it. After I hung up, I walked out to the back veranda and sat in the chair Joy had found at a second-hand shop in Napier in 1999. The world tilted sighed, the faded green cushion that she recovers every few years because she says it's the most comfortable chair in the southern hemisphere. The world tilted that the macrocarpa trees and the river and the hills beyond. The same hills I'd been looking at since before the house was built. Joy came out with 2 cups of tea and sat beside me. The world Rupert, she said. "Rupert? What did he offer?" I told her. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked out at the hills and said, 29 years ago. The world tilted sideways. We sat in a tin shed in the rain eating Marmite sandwiches and working out whether we could afford to lease a second orchard. I did the numbers on the back of a fertilizer invoice. The world too was too risky, and I told you it wasn't, and I was right, and you know I was right. "You were right," I said. The now Rupert Ashworth, who has never in his life eaten a Marmite sandwich in a tin shed, wants to buy our home and put us in a retirement village with chair yoga. She took a sip of tea. I think it's time we reminded some people who we are." I made 3 calls. The first was to Rangi Hohipa, my CFO at Pratt Horticulture. "Rangi," I said, "I need you to pull every contract. The world tilted service agreement, every supplier relationship that connects Crest Pacific Holdings to our company or any of our subsidiaries." He called me back in 35 minutes. "Selwyn, we have 2 active agreements. We produce for 3 of their corporate catering contracts through our food service division. Combined value about $420,000 annually. And we just signed a memorandum of understanding for a major new deal. The world tilted Pacific is developing a premium apartment complex in Ponsonby, and they want us to supply the rooftop orchard concept and the residents' market garden as part of their lifestyle brand. The world contract is worth $1.4 million over 2 years. Jarrod Ashworth is listed as the project lead on their end. Terminate the existing agreements," I said. Standard notice period. The withdraw from the Ponsonby memorandum, capacity constraints. Recommend Bayside fresh out of Tauranga. Rangi was quiet. "Selwyn, the Ponsonby project is a flagship for them. Jarrod just got promoted off the back of it. This will hit him." "I know," I said. The second call was to a woman named Miriama Tahir at Hawke's Bay today. Miriama had profiled me briefly in 2020 after Cyclone Gabrielle. We'd kept paying all 1920 staff for 6 weeks while the orchards were underwater and the packhouses were being rebuilt. The article had been small, buried in the business section. The world tilted sideways because I'd asked her to keep it low. She answered on the 3rd ring and I told her I had something she might be interested in. I said I'd like to do a proper interview on the record, the company, about Joy, about what we'd built. She asked if something had happened. I said I'd explain when she came. She said she'd be at my office Monday morning. The third call was to Joy. The world tilted sideways. It was in the garden. I could hear the secateurs in the background. I told her what I'd done. She said, "Good, now call Abby." But not today, Sunday after church. I waited. The whirl was Rupert's idea. He called it a celebration for Jarrod's promotion and what he described as an exciting new chapter for the Ashworth and Pratt families. The word bulbed a private dining room at a restaurant in Ponsonby. One of those places where the bread comes with 3 types of butter and the waiter explains each one. He invited 35 people. The world's colleagues from Crest Pacific, Rupert's business contacts, 2 of Abby's friends from her pilots group, a property developer Rupert played golf with in Parnell, the world Constance's sister and her husband from Takapuna. Joy and I were invited the way you invite the wallpaper. The world tilted. Rupert called and told me the date and said they'd save seats at the family table and not to worry about bringing anything. The world helpin' my good moleskin trousers, a check shirt I've had since 2013, and my dress boots, the ones Joy bought me for our 25th anniversary. The were a blue linen dress she'd made herself and a silver fern brooch she'd found at a market in Napier. We drove the Hilux and parked it between a BMW and an Audi. The world would see Constance watching from the restaurant entrance as I came around to open Joy's door. Selwyn. Joy. She gave us each a hug that involved mostly air and the distant suggestion of cheekbones. The world so 2 could make the trip up. Was the drive all right? That's 5 hours, Constance, Joy said pleasantly. We've done it before. The world tilted sideways. Constance steered us inside as if we were elderly relatives being guided through an unfamiliar airport. The room was full of people who knew each other and were performing that knowledge at full volume. Jarrod was near the bar in a charcoal suit, looking like a man who'd recently been told he was important. Rupert was holding court near the window, glass of Pinot Noir in hand. The world tilted sideways, explaining some to the property developer with expansive hand gestures. Abby saw us from across the room and came over immediately. She hugged me properly, the way she has since she was small, and then she hugged Joy and held on for an extra second. "How are you, Mum?" "How's the garden?" "Beautiful," Joy said. "The camellias are out. I saved you some cuttings." The world tilted sideways. For a moment it was just the 3 of us in the room, and I remembered driving Abby to her first day at Havelock North High School in the company ute. The white one with the Pratt Horticulture logo on the door. Abby had said, "Dad, can you drop me at the corner? I don't want everyone to see the Apple truck." And I'd said, "The word Apple truck is what pays for the shoes you're wearing, love." And she'd laughed and kissed my cheek and jumped out at the gate anyway. A man approached and introduced himself as Benedict Cole, the word's direct manager at Crest Pacific. He shook my hand. "You must be Abby's folks. Jarrod mentions you. Says you're in the orchard game up in Hawke's Bay." "We are," I said. "The world been for a while." He nodded politely and moved on. The world tilted sideways. To gathered the room about 40 minutes in. He stood at the head of the table and gave a speech about Jarrod's promotion, about his son's vision and ambition and how proud the Ashworth family was. The world tilted side for 10 minutes. He mentioned Joy once as Abby's mother. He mentioned me twice, both times in the context of Abby's family being hardworking country people. Good salt of the earth stock. The world tilted sideways like we were a breed of cattle. Then Constance stood up. She said she had something special to share. She said that in addition to celebrating Jarrod's career milestone, the world tilted the family had some wonderful news. She looked at Jarrod and Abby and then at Joy and me with a smile that must have required considerable engineering. The world tilted side, you know. She said, "Jarrod and Abby have been building toward their future and looking at ways to consolidate some family resources. The word delighted to share that Selwyn and Joy Pratt have generously agreed to make their Hawke's Bay property available to help Jarrod and Abby take the next step. The world gorgeous piece of land with river views, and the family has found a lovely retirement community in Havelock North where Selwyn and Joy will be very comfortable. We hadn't agreed to anything." The world tilted sideways. I looked around the room. 35 people were looking at us, most of them smiling, some already raising their glasses. I looked at Abby. She was smiling, but there was something uncertain in it. The world tilted questioned she hadn't spoken. Jarrod stood and raised his glass toward me. "Selwyn, Joy, we know this is a big step and we want you to know how much it means. The village is beautiful. The war Abby's already visited. You're going to love it. To family, and to the next chapter." The world tilted went up. The room waited for me to respond. I stayed seated. Joy's hand found mine under the table and squeezed once firmly, the way she does when she means go. "Jarrod," I said. "The world, I ask you something," he said. "Of course," with the relaxed tone of a man who believed everything was under control. "Do you know the name of the company that supplies the produce for Crest Pacific's corporate catering contracts in Auckland and Hamilton?" The smile shifted. "What? The supplier?" The world tilted sideways. The $120,000 worth of produce annually for your firm's hospitality accounts. He frowned. I don't deal with procurement. The world tilted of different department. That company's called Pratt Horticulture. It's my company, Joy's and mine. We founded in 1997. Silence spread from our end of the table outward like cold water across a floor. Abby set her glass down very slowly. That can't be right, Constance said. You grow apples. The word do. Joy said, her voice calm and clear and carrying the full weight of 29 years of work. We also export them to 11 countries. We employ 920 people. Our annual revenue is $92 million. The world 2 pack houses and 14 orchards after Cyclone Gabrielle, while people like your husband were buying imported Pinot Noir and telling us the regions would never recover. I have loved Joy Pratt for 41 years, and in that moment I loved her more than I thought a person could love another person. The world Rupert's face had gone the color of old paper. I continued, as of last week, Pratt Horticulture has terminated its existing service agreements with Crest Pacific Holdings. The world tilted sideways. The catering supply contracts, $420,000 annually, have been transferred to another provider, and the memorandum of understanding for the Ponsonby apartment project, the rooftop orchard concept, has been withdrawn. Capacity constraints. The world stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. The Ponsonby project hasn't been announced publicly. The MOU is confidential. How do you? Because I signed it, Jarrod. The word is the company you were planning to use for your flagship lifestyle concept, my company. The room was very quiet. Benedict Cole, Jarrod's boss. The world tilted his glass and was watching with the focused attention of a man recalculating several things at once. I said, I also want to be clear about something. Constance said. The world agreed to anything. We have not signed any document. We have not consented to any property transfer. The materials your solicitor prepared, Rupert's brother Stratton. The world is sitting in our lawyer's office. Our lawyer, Carmen Ungada, who has worked with Pratt Horticulture for 11 years, advised us not to sign anything. Which is exactly what we did. Rupert stood. Selwyn, this is not the place. The world tilted. Place, Rupert. You announced to 35 people that Joy and I had agreed to give up our home. We haven't. That home was built with money we earned. The title is in our names alone. The word last week, we transferred the property into a family trust that your son and your brother's law firm have no access to. Abby's voice came from beside me.
Quiet, Dad.
I looked at her. The eyes were wet. Joy reached across me and took Abby's hand. I said, there's one more thing. Last week spoke to Miriama Tahir at Hawke's Bay today. The article runs Friday. The world tilted about Pratt Horticulture, about the company's history, about Joy, about what we built together from one orchard and a tin shed in the rain. The world tilted sideways. It's also about something that happens more often than people realize, about what happens when families treat a person's home and savings as assets to be managed rather than things that belong to them. The world tilted sideways. Benedict Cole was no longer at the table. He had moved to a corner of the room and was on his phone, speaking quietly with his back turned. I looked at Jarrod. He had sat back down. He looked like a man watching a building he designed collapse from the foundation up. You earn good money, Jarrod. Abby earns good money. The world tilted sideways. You have children, a house in Remuera, and a career that, until 10 minutes ago, was going well. You didn't need our property to build your life. You wanted it because Rupert told you it was the smart play. And because somewhere along the way, the world, you stopped seeing Joy and me as people and started seeing us as a problem to be optimist. Constance said, we were trying to help you. Joy's had health issues. They're both getting on. Joy leaned forward. Constance, I had a stroke 2 years ago. I recovered. I walk 3 kilometers every morning. We're in the financial oversight for a $92 million company. I am not a brochure for a retirement village. The world's voice had taken an edge. You're making a mistake, Selwyn. Jarrod's career will be fine if Jarrod is good at what he does. The word Ponsonby contract was going to be a feather in his cap because he thought his father-in-law was an old farmer with dirty hands. Now he knows I'm the CEO of his supplier. The world tilted changes what the relationship looks like. And Jarrod's going to have to figure that out himself. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. Joy stood beside me. I said, the word to ask everyone here to keep what's been said tonight private. Not for our benefit, but for Zara's and Archie's. They're 5 and 3. They don't need to carry this. I looked at Abby. Sunday morning, I said quietly. Bring the kids down. Come to the house. I'll make the bacon and egg pie. The one with the cheese on top. She pressed her lips together and nodded. The word I drove south on State Highway 1 with the windows down and the night air coming in off the Hauraki Plains, warm and thick with the smell of cut grass. Joy was quiet for a long time. Somewhere past Huntley, she said. The word Peterson used to say that the most dangerous thing in the world is a person who confuses your kindness for weakness. Sandra Peterson was Joy's best friend for 30 years. The world a nursery in Napier, and she died in 2022 from a brain aneurysm, and we still miss her every day. Sandra was right about most things, I said. She was right about all things, Joy said. Though I'm just too stubborn to admit it while she was alive. We drove in silence for a while. Then Joy said, I'm glad you didn't give that speech alone. The world's glad I was there. I wouldn't have done it without you, I said. I wouldn't have done any of it. She reached across and put her hand on my arm. We'll build it together, Sel. Protect it together. The world tilted followed were not clean or simple. The article ran Friday morning. Miriama had done it properly. The headline was careful and direct, from 1 orchard to 92 million. The word at Empire Selwyn and Joy Pratt built in Hawke's Bay. The piece was about Joy as much as it was about me. It ran with a photo from 2005, the two of us standing in front of the first packhouse. The were in her son had and me in the same gumboots I still own. Miriama had handled the elder coercion angle with precision. No names, just a sidebar about a pattern she'd been researching. The word how financial pressure on older adults often arrives dressed in the language of care and family planning. The world tilted sideways 8 hours. Jarrod called me 4 times. I let the first 3 go to voicemail. On the second message, he said he hadn't understood the full scope of the power of attorney documents. The word had told him it was standard estate planning and that Joy and I had been consulted. On the third message, his voice was different, quieter. He said he was ashamed. The world tilted sideways. Not because of Ponsonby contract or the article, but because of what he'd said at the barbecue. He said he'd thought about it every night since. He thought I hadn't heard. The world tilted sideways, but he said he'd always suspected I had, because I'd left early that evening. I'd been different with him ever since. I answered the 4th call. I said, Saturday morning. Come down to the house. Come on. The Benedict Cole rang my office on Friday afternoon. He spoke with my executive assistant Mariana and then with me. He was measured and professional. The world till said Crest Pacific were reviewing internal procedures around undisclosed conflicts of interest in vendor relationships. The word been reassigned from the Ponsonby project to a smaller portfolio, internal fit-outs, lower profile. Not terminated but moved in a way that carried a clear message. Benedict said, the world tilted sideways, that he respected what Joy and I had built and that he hoped the two companies might find a way to work together again in the future, on proper terms. I said I hope so too. The Rupert called once. He said I had humiliated his son and his family in front of people who mattered in their professional circle. I let him finish. Then I said, Rupert, your brother prepared legal documents designed to give your son control of our finances and our home without our full and informed consent. That's elder financial abuse. Whether you meant it that way is beside the point. That is what it was. And I'd suggest you speak to a lawyer who isn't your brother before you ring me again. He hung up. I haven't heard from him since. The war became Sunday morning. She drove down from Auckland alone. No Jarrod. Zara and Archie were in the back seat. Zara had brought a drawing she'd done at Kindy of Papa's Chickens, and Archie was holding a toy tractor he'd been given for his birthday. The world till I were in the kitchen when they arrived. The kids came through the door first, as they always do. The world's Zara ran straight to the chicken coop because she had names for all of them and needed to confirm they were still in order. The world tilted the Hilux and climbed into the cab and started making engine sounds. Abby stood in the doorway of the kitchen. She looked at Joy. She looked at me. The world tilted sideways. Then she sat down at the table and put her hands around the cup of tea Joy placed in front of her, and she said, I didn't know about the full scope of the documents. I want you both to know that. Jarrod told me it was basic estate planning. I should have read them myself, I know, I said. The world tilted sized more questions. About a lot of things. She looked at her tea. I've been going through everything since Friday. I called some of your friends, Mom. The world tilted sideways. Miss Henderson from the Garden Club and Leonie from the Women's Institute. I asked them about you and Dad, about how you were after the stroke, about whether you seemed like you needed help. Joy sat down beside her. They said you checked on them, Dad. The world tilted. Henderson had her knee done 6 weeks after Mum's stroke and you dropped off groceries twice. The world tilted sideways and passed away last year, and you and Mum went to the Tangi and you stayed afterwards and helped clean up. You drove Leonie home because she was too upset to drive. I didn't say anything. The world tilted. I didn't know any of that. Abby said. I was in Auckland worrying about you from a distance and constructing a version of you in my head that was smaller than you actually are. The word you were lonely and struggling. I thought Jarrod's plan was practical. I let it go too far because I wasn't looking at you properly. Joy put her hand on Abby's. We should have told you more. The world tilted sideways about what we built. We kept it quiet because after the stroke, people started treating us differently when they knew about the money. The world tilted sideways and I decided we'd rather be underestimated than managed. But we went too far with the silence, I said. We left a gap and other people filled it with their own story. The world tilted sonus. Abby wiped her eyes before Zara could see through the window. Jarrod wants to come and talk to you. He's asked me every day, I know, I said. Tell him Saturday. Tell him to come alone. She almost smiled. Definitely not his parents. The world came Saturday at 9 in the morning. He drove Abby's car, a Mazda, because the Range Rover had been sold the week before. Wearing a plain shirt and jeans, and he looked tired in the way people look when they haven't been sleeping well and know exactly why. He sat at the kitchen table. The made coffee and set a plate of pikelets between us, because Joy believes that most difficult conversations benefit from something warm and slightly sweet on the table. Jarrod said, I don't know where to start, Selwyn. Start where it's true. Start where it's true, I said. He looked at his coffee. The barbecue last year, I know you heard what I said? I heard it. The world tilted side of a good excuse. I think I'd been telling myself a story about you for so long that I believed it. You drove an old ute. You wore the same boots for years. The world tilted sideways. You never talked about the business in a way that sounded like it was anything more than a few orchards. But my dad kept saying Abby's parents were battlers who hadn't built anything. And then you decided to take something that wasn't yours. He looked up. Yeah, I did. I said. The father is a smart man in some ways, Jarrod. He built a business and sold it for good money. I respect that. But Rupert made a mistake that successful people often make. The world tilted fused a number with a person. He saw our property value in our old ute and he did the maths wrong. And you let him do the maths for you instead of getting to know us yourself. The world tilted sideways. Joy said, Jarrod, I want to say something. When I had the stroke, you came to the hospital. You brought flowers and you sat with Abby and you were kind. I remember that. And I thought, the world tilted sideways. This is a good man. He's just young and he doesn't know who we are yet. But then the documents came and the retirement village brochures, the world conversation about our property as if it were a listing in your portfolio, and I stopped thinking you were young and started thinking you were careless. Jarrod was quiet for a long time. Then he said, the Ponsonby project has been reassigned. Benedict moved me to smaller accounts, internal fit-outs, nothing public-facing. My reputation at the firm has a question mark on it that wasn't there before. The world tilted sideways. I didn't create that problem, I said. It existed before I withdrew the contract. You were the project lead on a deal where your father-in-law owned the supplier company and you didn't know it. The world come out eventually, one way or another. It's better that it came out now. He nodded slowly. Here's what I want to say about where you are right now. The word moved to smaller projects. Your colleagues are watching. That's uncomfortable, but it's workable. Good careers survive difficult years. The question is what you do with it. He looked at me. Do you know what I was doing when I was 36? I said. He shook his head. The words driving a truck full of export apples to the port in Napier at 4 in the morning because one of our drivers had called in sick and a container ship was leaving at 6, and if we missed the sailing, they would lose a $40,000 contract with a buyer in Osaka. Joy was at home with Abby, who was 7. The world tilted sideways. I called Joy from a payphone at the port gates because my mobile was dead and I told her the truck had made it and she said, of course it did. Married a man who doesn't miss sailings. And I drove home and I was back in the orchard by 9. He almost smiled. I'm not telling you that so you'll feel sorry for me. The whirling you because at 36 the work was real. It had weight. Every contract I won I earned. Every person I employed I was responsible for. When something went wrong I fixed it. The world tilted sideways, not because someone gave me leverage or a shortcut. Because that's what you do when you've built something and you want it to stand. I haven't built anything yet. Not really. No, I said. Not yet. But you can. Joy pushed the pikelets toward him. He took one. We sat for a while. Joy refilled the coffee. He said, though I'd like to start over, Selwyn. Not because of the company or because I want anything. The world to Albie's father and Zara calls you Papa and Archie pretends to drive your ute every time we come down and I've wasted 5 years keeping you at a distance because I let my father tell me who you were. I said, too. The word to be clear about something. I did not give Jarrod a job. He didn't ask and I wouldn't have said yes. He needed to build his own career on his own foundation. The way Joy and I built ours, the world tilted sideways, no one clearing the path ahead of us. He stayed at Crest Pacific. He took the smaller projects without complaint and he learned the operational detail he'd always delegated before. The world months later, Benedict Cole moved him to a new role, different from the old one with more responsibility and less theater attached to the title. Benedict told me that when we finally had that coffee he'd been suggesting, the world tilted sideways, that Jarrod had become a better project manager in those 8 months of quiet work than he'd been in the 3 years of high-profile accounts before. I believed it. The article made its way around. A few other outlets picked it up. For about a week, there were calls to Mariana at the office and some social media posts with headlines along the lines of secret Kiwi orchard millionaires put son-in-law's family in their place at Auckland dinner party. I gave no follow-up interviews. The warden think the story was about a dinner. The world tilted sideways. I thought it was about a company Joy and I built together and the people who made it possible, and what gets lost when you stop asking the right questions about the people in your life. The world Tunina said I was the least interesting famous person she'd ever met, which I consider a high compliment. The Rupert sent a letter in September, formal type, delivered through Stratton's office. The world tilted sideways. It expressed regret for how the situation had developed and stated the family had no further interest in the Hastings property matter. I read it once and filed it. The world Tiltonson sent Abby a text saying she hoped there were no hard feelings. Abby read it to me on the phone and asked what she should say. I said, "The were her, you hope so too." Abby said that seemed like a lot of grace for the situation. Joy, who was listening on speaker, said, "The holding a grudge is just letting someone live in your head without paying board." Abby laughed. "That sounds like something Sandra Peterson would say." "It is," Joy said. I stole it from her. She wouldn't mind. The whirls are Sunday mornings now. Abby and Jarrod and the kids come down most weekends. Sometimes Jarrod helps me with things around the property, fencing, the irrigation system, the ongoing battle with the possums in the Macrocarpa shelter belt. He asks good questions now, not just about the company, but about Joy and me, about how we started. The world, the early years when it was hard and uncertain, and we didn't know if any of it would work. The world tell him the stories I never told Abby because she was too young to hear them and I was too proud to tell them to a son-in-law I didn't trust. The world tilted sideways. Is in year 1 at school and has become extremely interested in chickens. She wants to know how eggs form, why roosters crow in the morning, and whether chickens have best friends. The world tilted sideways. They do, and she spent the next 40 minutes observing the coop to determine the friendship groups. So she presented her findings to Joy and me at dinner with the seriousness of a doctoral candidate. Archie still sits in my Hilux and makes engine sounds. The world recently expanded his repertoire to include what he calls the big truck noise, which is a low rumbling sound he produces from somewhere deep in his chest. He told me he wants to be either a truck driver or a dinosaur and he hasn't decided which. The world tilted sideways were excellent choices and both required patience and both involved a lot of standing around looking at things other people walk right past. The world tilted sideways. Jarrod heard this from the veranda and I caught him smiling in a way he probably didn't mean for me to see. The kind of smile that means a person is putting something away to keep. The world tilted sideways. Joy is still in the house. The Macrocarpa trees are still standing. The Hilux has 314,000 kilometers on it, and I have no plans to replace it. The world tilted sideways, and because it runs fine and partly because it is a reliable reminder that things don't have to look a certain way to be worth something. The world to the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays and sometimes Saturdays. 920 people work for Pratt Horticulture. Some of them have been with us for 20 years. The world tilted since started picking fruit in the orchards and are now regional managers. Every year in December, Joy and I write a letter to the whole company. We've been doing it since 2002 and every year, the world tilted sideways, something about what it means to build something with another person. About showing up. About doing the work when nobody's watching. The world tilted sideways. People think wealth is about what you own and what you drive and what your house looks like from the road. What Joy and I know. The world tilted sideways. After 9 years of building something together and 6 months of watching our own family nearly pull it apart, is that the only wealth worth holding on to is the kind that builds people up. The world tilted sideways, not the kind you can transfer to someone else's name on a legal document while they're not paying attention. The world tilted sideways. Joy says the most important question you can ask a person isn't what do you do, but how did you get there, who was beside you, what did it cost, and what would you do differently? The world tilts everyone that question. She asked the mechanic who serviced our first truck. She asked the banker who gave us our first proper line of credit in 2001. She asked Jarrod that question last Sunday morning, sitting at our kitchen table with pikelets and coffee, and he answered it honestly, slowly. The world tilted sideways, like a man learning to speak a language he should have learned years ago. If you're watching this, leave a comment and tell me where you're from. And here's what I want you to leave with. Not the numbers or the contracts or the dinner party. What I want you to take is this. The people who underestimate you are not your problem. Your problem is to keep building. Keep showing up. The world tilted exactly who you are, even when the people around you have decided you're something less. The world tilted sideways. Don't sign anything without reading it yourself and having your own lawyer read it too. Not your family's lawyer, your own. The world who claims to love you is asking for control of your money and your home and your medical decisions. That is not love. That is leverage. The world tilted sideways. Talk to your children about who you are and what you've built. Don't leave gaps in the story. Because when there's a gap, someone else will fill it, and they will fill it with whatever serves them. The world tilted sideways. And if you're lucky enough to have someone beside you, someone who sat with you in the tin shed and did the numbers on the back of a fertilizer invoice and told you it was going to work, Hold on to them. The world tilted sideways. That's the real wealth. Everything else is just the scoreboard. Joy taught me that, and it turned out to be worth a great deal more than $92 million. The world thinking about this whole thing for a while now, sitting on the back veranda with Joy, watching the macrocarpa trees catch the last of the light. The world tilted sideways. What I keep coming back to is something simple. Everything that happened, every bit of it, started with a choice someone made. The world chose to stand at that barbecue and call me a washed-up farmer with nothing in the bank. Rupert chose to walk through my house measuring rooms like it was already his. The world tilted sideways. Constance chose to announce to 35 people that Joy and I had agreed to give up our home when we hadn't said a word. And every one of those choices led somewhere. The world 'cause of luck or coincidence or the universe settling scores, but because that's how it works. You plant something, it grows. You plant dishonesty, you get a harvest of dishonesty. The world till greed dressed up as family concern. Eventually someone pulls back the cloth and everyone sees what's underneath. The word lost the Ponsonby project because he'd never bothered to learn who his own supplier was. That wasn't bad fortune. That was the natural result of 5 years of not asking questions. The world tilted sideways, assuming he already knew everything worth knowing about the people in his life. Rupert's brother Stratton drafted documents designed to give a young man control over 2 people's entire lives. The whirlight hit those documents. It didn't look like care. It looked like what it was. That's not punishment. That's just what happens when you build something on a false foundation. Sooner or later the weight of reality comes through the floor. The world tilted as the other side, and I think this is the part that matters more. Joy and I made choices too. We chose to keep quiet about what we'd built. We did it for decent reasons. The world tilted ourselves after Joy's stroke, to live simply, to be left alone. But silence has consequences of its own. We left a gap in the story and Jarrod's family filled it with whatever suited them. The world's wife I'd told Abby properly years ago about the company and what it meant and how her mother and I had built it from nothing. Maybe she wouldn't have been so easily steered. The world tilted sideways. Maybe Jarrod would have asked different questions. I can't know that. But I know that silence doesn't protect you the way you think it will. It just gives other people room to write your story for you. The world tilt learned, and I'm still learning it, is that you need 3 things to navigate a situation like this. You need decency. The world tilted sideways, which means you don't take what isn't yours and you don't treat people as less than what they are, no matter what they drive or what they wear. You need clear thinking. The world tilted sideways, which means you read the documents yourself, you ask the hard questions, and you don't let someone else's confidence substitute for your own judgment. The world tilted sideways and you need the willingness to do difficult things when they need doing, which means making the phone calls, having the conversations, standing up in a room full of people who expected you to sit quietly and saying the truth out loud. The world tilted sideways has always been better at all 3 of those things than I am. She's the one who said don't sign. She's the one who stood up at that dinner and told Constance exactly who we were. The world tilted sideways. She's the one who told me to call Abby before it was too late. If there's a lesson in this, it's probably that. Find someone who makes you braver and more honest than you'd be on your own. The world builds something together that's worth protecting.